for years and in fact we had a conversation about it on the show a few weeks back about the blowback that attorneys risk facing from the public over who they choose to represent. I get tweets from viewers asking why I keep inviting certain lawyers who represented less than desirable clients, and of course that question that we all get, defense lawyers get, how can you defend a guilty person? I'm curious, how would you respond? What would be your response to that question?
Well, I first of all, let me start by saying that that is a general question I get all the time. I don't know whether it's specific to Rkelly or not, and I'm not here to, I don't trust the verdict that came back in Rkelly's case. So I'm not going to say he's guilty until I believe that there was a fair process. I don't rely on verdicts where the process was not fair. So let me make that clear. I do not believe that the verdict is a reliable indicator of whether Rkelly is in fact factually guilty. But to your general question of, how do you represent unpopular people? How do you represent people that the media has already convicted? How do I represent them? I'm a defense attorney, and that's what I do. And I believe to my core that the government needs to be held needs to be held accountable, and when they don't go about this process in a fair and just way, that is a miscarriage of justice, and it affects all of us. And I guess I just really believe in that principle. It just doesn't matter to me whether it's Rkelly or Bill Cosby or any number of wrongfully convicted people that I have represented over the years. It just does not matter. It's all the same to me, because if the system doesn't work for one, it doesn't work for any of us. And I guess I'm just really focused on that principle. And it doesn't, my view is if you're a defense attorney and you can't get with that idea, then, maybe find a different career.
It's on you, and that's why these haters is at you. So just keep on doing you, baby. You don't have to give these fools an explanation. I admit it, I admit it.
Here to support Officer Rkelly because I believe he's innocent.
What have you seen in the trial so far? Do you think it's a fair trial?
Yes, I believe it's a fair trial, and I believe now y'all can really hear the truth. It's not a one-sided story no more. He's been defamed in the media, and every media is biased. So now y'all get the truth.
Do you believe some of the witnesses, Javonda Pace, the stories that she told?
No, they're too inconsistent.
Judge handing it to you.
More of a consecutive sentence, absolutely. We asked for more of a consecutive sentence. And really, one of the big things we're disappointed in, we're disappointed that we didn't get more on the restitution front. Restitution is critically important in these cases. That's why it's mandated by law. And again, just to be frank about it, we are disappointed that did not turn out differently at this point. The question was whether we could do anything to challenge the restitution decision. It's complex, so at this point, I guess I'm not comfortable in in commenting one way or the other as to whether there's anything else that could be done on that front.
Judge handing it to you, and then you're going to bill the taxpayers a bunch of shitload of money. You suck. You suck then, you suck now. You will forever suck. So the reason you can't get work outside of your connections is because you suck. You're not smart. You never were. You got gifts as a prosecutor because the system is rigged in your favor. So all those years that you won because 90% of the time there was a judge who was already predisposed to rule against the defendant and in your favor. And in the process, you came to believe that you were good, that you were smart, that you knew what you were doing. And then you get out into the mean, bad world of the capital marketplace. And there, you can't get a fucking client without some judge handing it to you. And then you're gonna bill the taxpayers a bunch of shitload of money. You suck. You sucked then, you suck now. You will forever suck.
This is going to sound crazy, man, but I really think that I'm a nobody that just happen to have a talent. That just happen to have a talent that draws a lot of attention. And a lot of that, because of a nobody, I stay private. Because even as a kid coming up, I never wanted nobody to know that I couldn't read or spell. I didn't want nobody to know that about me. So, so that took me dead into me being private and shut down all the time. Wearing sunglasses a lot. I want people to see my eyes. I used to feel like as a shorty growing up that if they see my eyes, they'll find out I can't read for some reason or can't spell. All of that stuff was haunting me, you know what I'm saying? And not to mention you got your brother and sisters, coming up as kids talking about you, how you gonna ever be a writer when you can't even spell. But people don't know. Every song I've ever written came off the top of my head. I never wrote nothing down in the studio because I couldn't spell it to be able to write it. So I put my music up, I do my music, I put the mic up, and I put my mouth to the mic and start singing whatever comes out of my head. It just so happens to be a bunch of hit songs. And that's how I've written, and all my life, being in the studio for 30 years. So I want people to know because a lot of people pretty much got me understood. It's just one giant, high-profile misunderstanding about me, and by me being so private, people, that want to know you, they want to know you because for one, they probably won't chasing clout. They feel good when they can tell somebody, "Oh, I know him. This is how he is. This is who he is. This is what he do." This, but they really don't know me. I was supposed to get a bunch of more Grammys, but I didn't get a lot of Grammys because of the fact that show you how misunderstood I am. Back then, I didn't want people to know I couldn't read, write, or spell. So when they came to me to do announcements and bring up other artists on stage, I declined to do it because I couldn't read the teleprompter. But I didn't tell them that because I didn't want it to be out that I couldn't read at the time. So I would just decline it. And so they would tell me that everybody else does it. Why can't Rkelly do it? You think he do good? And it became a big deal. And next thing you know, I wasn't getting Grammys no more, even though I had #1 hits all over the radio. So that's how misunderstood I am. And it bleeds over into other situations as well. They feel like I just popped on the scene and became famous. But nobody know where I came from. Nobody know my background. Nobody know I was a street performer for years. Nobody knew I hitchhiked from Chicago to LA to try to get famous and just trying to make it. I lived on the Venice Beach part, just out the street performing. I slept under basketball bleachers and just trying to get a record deal out there in LA. But every door closed on me. Everybody said no, because I had this really basketball swag at the time, and I was bald-headed, and I was trying to just, do some music. But back then, you had the I'll Be Sure, the pretty light-skinned boys with the curly hair, and they had all these images, that they portrayed, and they, and those are the guys that made it. But I came back to Chicago and ended up getting a record deal at a backyard barbecue. So,
what do you mean a backyard station?
This is going to sound crazy, man.
To deal with having sex with an underage minor. However, the Racketeering Act, the RICO Act, does have certain acts within them. There are 11 acts within that, and the prosecution only has to prove 2 beyond a reasonable doubt. And within those acts, there are allegations of Rkelly engaging in sex with a minor.
Now, it's very hard for us because of the setup, the remote view, the remote viewing with the screens for spectators.
Yes.
and reporters to gauge what the jury is thinking or
absolutely
whatever. But how tough is a case like this to prosecute and try to get a win on?
So it's very tough when you're pretty much we want to classify this as a he say, she say, because as of now, all the evidence that's been presented is testimony evidence. And when you're dealing with just testimony evidence, you're dealing with believability, with credibility. The jury will have to believe these witnesses beyond a reasonable doubt in order to find them guilty. And again, when you're dealing with just testimony, it's hard for some people to try to find someone guilty just based on the word of someone, especially when you have a lot of these females that were acting contradictory to what is alleged by the prosecution in terms of, oh, but you didn't leave, you could have left, you stayed. Jane Doe number 5 stayed with Rkelly for 4 years.
Okay, and anything else you want to say about the case that strikes you about this?
Well, the case is still ongoing. I am looking forward. I believe that the prosecution is going to call some kind of expert to deal with why is it that victims act the way they do and take so long to do an outcry or realize that they are a victim, to help the jury to explain to them and be able to put both sides together in terms of you acted this way, but now you're saying that it's criminal, but you didn't say that before. So
that and then that issue of consent too is going to be critical, right?
Yeah, so the issue of consent, and that's why that expert is also going to be important, because the thing is that what the prosecution is alleging is that they were pretty much under the spell of Rkelly. You know, he used his fame and fortune and they couldn't say no because he had pretty much brainwashed them. So that's going to come up, but you know, we just have to wait and see. There's still a couple more weeks. The case hasn't been fully presented.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
To you. And if you don't give them a piece, they'll find a way to get a piece of you, one way or the other. Now, I've been blackmailed 1 billion times in my career. Before the trial, during the trial, after the trial, I've been sued for stuff that, ridiculous things, you know. At one point in my life, I was an ATM machine, you know. Yeah. People just come up and just push whatever, and if it don't come out, they'll go tell somebody this, or they'll go run and say this and run and say that. You know, but I'm used to that. I'm you know, you don't get used to it. Let me take that back. I'm not used to it, but I'm used to the fact that people. I know that people will do this. Sometimes even your own when you're.
Hey everybody, hey. If y'all can, as y'all coming in here, hit the like button. I don't know if that has something to do with why my StreamYard keeps going out. Probably that I need to get back in the algorithm. So y'all know I don't never ask y'all. So if y'all can y'all just hit the like button? Alright, well let's go with this first thing. Trump has been I guess you would say an attempted assassination here in Pennsylvania. So let's get into it.
Getting an email now from CBS News contributor Richard Esposito. This says that according to multiple state, local, and federal law enforcement sources, the shooter who fired at Donald Trump was, quote, neutralized, as we have reported, by U.S. Secret Service agents. This was most likely from a counter-assault team. Multiple spectators were wounded and injured, at least one in critical condition. This is all based on initial reports, but what is happening now is we're starting to piece together what is it that exactly transpired. This is an active crime scene.
It is, and our reporters who follow every movement that the candidate makes, Jake Rosen, Olivia Rinaldi, were there. They saw it happen. They heard it. You can see from that very rough video that they dropped to the ground. And by the way, political violence is not necessarily a norm in this country, but let's put this in the context of not just the moment we're in, but what we, as reporters, have been preparing for, which is the expectation that in this election cycle, there very well may be political violence. And our reporters do train for that now. That is something you do typically when you go overseas to cover an election, but now our reporters are doing that to cover these rallies to cover political conventions. And so we are happy to know that those two reporters are safe. But as we're seeing from the video, they are feeding in.
I just watched one of the videos Jake Rosen sent in, and he's talking to attendees who are clearly traumatized. And one gentleman, I'm sure we'll have it soon here at CBS News on Air, had a shirt that clearly had blood on it in some capacity. And so you're seeing reporters doing their jobs for CBS News and other outlets, but you see those attendees just rattled by the experience of being part of a violent event.
Because even if there was an intended target, as there appears to have been, to have a shot like that, multiple shots at a very well-guarded stage, there were people in the area who were also hit, which suggests, and if you could hear it, it didn't sound like an automatic weapon, but there were others that were hit in the area. And we are being careful, and when we are reading these initial reports and editing, I would have to say, some of the graphic detail that we are getting from some of our reporters on the ground.
And we're just getting a new update that from our reporters, Olivia Rinaldi and Jake Rosen, and I'm sure you're getting this update as well, that people are being escorted out. Jake Rosen spoke to an emergency room physician who saw a man shot in the head with brain matter on the ground. That's according to an ER physician performed CPR, but he did not. He's dealing with that at this moment. That's Jake Rosen, to be clear, Jake Rosen, our reporter on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania, has spoken to an emergency room physician who saw a man shot in the head with brain matter on the ground. That's based on Jake Rosen's reporting. Jake looked at the camera after the incident, saw blood coming from Trump's ear in some way, his neck. Jake was on the scene. He was our reporter on the scene. Scott McFarland, who has been on the ground doing excellent reporting as well, heard, in his view, 8 to 10 explosions based on his reporting. He said the crowd ducked based on his reporting notes, hit the ground when a popping sound occurred. To Margaret's point, it was a popping sound. The press was under the risers. They saw Secret Service swarm to the left of Trump following the incident, saw helicopters come in a few minutes after. That's based on the ground reporting from Olivia Rinaldi, Jake Rosen, and Scott McFarland, who are in Butler, Pennsylvania.
And we do have that reporting that at least one person has been injured in critical condition. And it is still early. A lot more details will come out. People's conditions change. They go up, they go down. We'll learn more about, hopefully, President Trump's condition. We are told he is safe, but we don't have the details. Was he hit directly? Was he just grazed? We're now being told that Vice President Kamala Harris has also been briefed on the incident. We know that President Biden has been briefed by members of his cabinet. Now Vice President Harris has been briefed. She was also addressing crowds today at her own rally, as was the First Lady. All of these figures out on the campaign trail as this campaign heats up. Service that he is safe, but where is he? He was hustled out of that area by the Secret Service in a motorcade. Is he in a hospital? Is he still in a car? Is he still in the area? We're being told that the governor of Pennsylvania has also been briefed on the situation. He said that violence targeted at any political party or political leader is absolutely unacceptable. He says that Pennsylvania State Police are on the scene in Butler County and working with federal and local partners. The governor of Pennsylvania briefed, the White House briefed. I'm just getting some more notes here. We're also being told that a local emergency room physician saw a man who was shot in the head. We don't know who this person was. Clearly, it's possible that someone else may have been hit when shots rang out at this event. Clearly, this is a chaotic scene. There were thousands of people at this rally. And, you know, Bob, I know that you've covered plenty of these. What is the sense of security when you're there? I mean, you go through all of these checks, but still, you're packed into a small space with thousands of other people at a time when emotions are running high. What is it like to be inside one of these rallies?
It's a very intense environment. It's a very crowded environment. And our reporting, as you just noted, is that there's concern that there's not a real sense yet of whether this was one shooter or what exactly happened. I have sources who were at the rally texting me right now saying there's bedlam on the scene. There's concern about what exactly happened. Were there multiple shooters or not? Are people safe? And so for the Trump rally, what you're seeing there on screen is what often it follows former President Trump as he's on the campaign trail. He's alone on stage. The Secret Service stands about 5 to 10 paces off. And you have between 5 to 15 or sometimes even 20 to 25,000 people. He often goes to arenas, some of the minor league hockey arenas around the country in smaller cities, but often in the summer and springtime, he's outside. And you have to go through a long line of Secret Service to get into the event, to make sure you're fully go through a magnetometer to see if you have any kind of weapon or metal on you. And so it's a very slow and orderly process to get into these events. Secret Service has presence not just at the immediate site, but at surrounding neighborhood locations. This is an unusual one, and that former President Trump usually has a wider stage. This is a bit of a smaller rally in the small area of Butler, Pennsylvania.
And you bring up an important point. We don't know yet what the scope was. Who opened fire? Was there more than one person? Was there more than one person hit? We're seeing reports of someone else possibly conducting CPR at the scene, but it's just too early to know. We are still getting information in, but this is a horrific moment in American history. No matter what the outcome is, he is safe, we're being told, but it doesn't change the fact that this is truly historic.
It's historic. We are watching something, political violence in real time, and the governor of Pennsylvania, Democrat Josh Shapiro, just...
And let me say this, and for people to think that this is going to make it, we already know since the debate that Trump is leading the battleground states over Biden. We already know that even Biden's associates and his Democrats have already came forward saying that they want him to step down. So when this happened in Pennsylvania, Biden is from Delaware, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I believe so. And Biden was already falling behind, like I said, with the battleground states. This just made it more for people to want to vote for Trump. When the Supreme Court made their decision, I believe I know it was a few days before July 4th. And I don't know if people did their actual research on that decision that the Supreme Court made, but I'm going to get into that too. So people can really understand that the judges that was on that Supreme Court, some of them were elected in with Trump, okay? And it came out that Trump will not face any charges with the election case, with the incident with the Capitol. Any president while they are in office and they claim that they're doing things under them being a president, they don't have to face charges. So like the bribery thing they tried to say with Stormy Daniels, I'm gonna break all that stuff down and explain why they made their decision as well. But again, this is only going to make people want to vote for Trump even more. Oh, they tried to indict him. They tried to put charges on him. He was found guilty with the Stormy Daniels case, the hush money case. Now he was he was almost assassinated at a campaign rally with thousands and thousands of people there, which some innocent people were affected and in critical condition. So if people think that this was going to make people say, "Oh, let's vote for Biden," no, this is going to push the narrative even harder of Trump saying that, you know, all this is coming from the Democrats and they're trying to falsely put charges on him. And if y'all remember at the debate, Biden was saying at the debate and after, when he was doing some of his campaign rallies, that if Trump gets in office, he wants to be a dictatorship. And that if Trump gets in office, he could come after his enemies. And if he want to like send harm to them while he's in office, he won't be in trouble. So Biden was already pushing a narrative like, if Trump becomes president, he's going to try to come after me and other people that try to put charges on him, and he'll get away with it. But for somebody to be on top of a roof at a campaign rally, which I don't understand how the Secret Service didn't spot this person on the roof, who obviously had a rifle. That this wasn't no handgun or none of that. They said the person was 20 to 30 feet away. So again, this is another narrative that's going to get pushed that, oh, this is coming from Biden's team. Oh, this is them trying to stop Trump from being president. If that bullet didn't graze Trump's ear, and that bullet would have got any closer to any other part of his body or directly like hit him in the seat, he would have been gone. I don't know how that person was able to get that close. He literally just been saved by God. The bullet literally grazed his skin on his ear. So this is outrageous. I wouldn't wish this on Biden, his family, Trump, his family, nobody. And from what I'm seeing, it's like they're trying to push the 19th century, not the 20th century. And I understand the part where some people say, "Oh, the Supreme Court judges that knew they're trying to rewrite the Constitution as if this was the 19th century, and any president who gets in office is not like they're a president; it's like they're a king because they don't have to face any criminal charges." Like, so basically, people want to just say, "Oh, if Trump gets in office, he don't have to face charges." No, that's any president. So if Biden wins and get in office, it's the same thing. If he want to go after his enemies, or if you look at that that new law that they written, that the Supreme Court ruled on a few days before July 4th, they basically said any president won't have to ever face criminal charges if things occur while they're in office. So I think people don't understand that. They want to just keep saying, "Oh, well, Trump can get away with this, get away with that." No, that's going to be for any president. So if Biden wins, it's the same thing.
Said on social media, this has no place in Pennsylvania or the United States. You're seeing right now in this immediate aftermath a bipartisan outcry in outrage about what unfolded in Butler, Pennsylvania. The governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, said, "I have been briefed on the situation. The police are on the scene. He's working with federal and state and local partners." We're told the White House, the president of the United States, Joe Biden, also briefed running against Trump in the race.
And Bob, I'm going to jump in because we do have a statement now from a spokesperson representing former President Trump. It says President Trump thanks law enforcement and first responders for their quick action during this heinous act. He is fine and he's being checked out at a local medical facility. More details will follow. I'm going to read this one more time. This is a statement from President Trump's team. It says President Trump thanks law enforcement and first responders for their quick action during this heinous act. He is fine and is being checked out at a local medical facility. More details will follow. More details will follow, Bob, because this is
an active crime scene. I mean, that's why we're trying at CBS News to take our time to digest the information. We're getting the statements from the local leaders, the state leaders, federal law enforcement. But this is a fluid moment. You have still people on the ground on the site of the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Crime and law enforcement officials are trying to piece together exactly what happened. You see the Secret Service ducking down there. It has echoes of what happened to President Reagan when he was shot by John Hinckley at the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C., the ducking into the limousine, rushing to the hospital. And let's remember, it's important at these moments, these crossroads in American history, especially those that involve violence, to not make guesses about what happened. President Reagan famously was in the limousine on the way to the hospital and said, I'm okay. But he didn't actually know the full extent of the damage that had been done by the shooter to his body. And so the Secret Service, as history has now shown us through many books and reporting, did the right thing by taking President Reagan to the hospital to make sure he got a full check, didn't take him back to the White House. In fact, years later, multiple Reagan books show if he had gone back to the White House after being shot, he might have risked death. And so these are very fluid moments where even the person involved sometimes doesn't have the full grasp of what exactly has happened. We're trying to learn more and more.
And we do know that he is being checked out by medical officials to determine the extent of his injuries, if any. It is possible that he was just grazed. It is possible that it was more than that. This comes on a day when we were expecting potentially news on who he was going to announce as his vice presidential pick. You and I spoke by phone this evening to learn about your reporting, and we have statements here from some of the top contenders. Senator Marco Rubio has tweeted on X, "We are praying for the president and all of those attending the rally in Pennsylvania today." Doug Burgum has tweeted, "Please join Catherine and me in praying for President Trump and his family and everyone attending the rally today." J.D. Vance, senator from Ohio, saying, "Everyone join me in praying for President Trump and everyone at that rally. I hope everyone is okay." That is a sentiment that is being echoed across the country, across the world, I am sure. But this is the worst possible scenario. This is, as you said, political violence unfolding in front of us.
It is something that has not happened, so thankfully, in recent presidential cycles. As a reporter, you're almost sometimes attuned to how Secret Service has a constant presence, but luckily it has not been something you think about, that you're on somehow the precipice of violence when you're covering a rally for President Biden or for former President Trump. I'm getting text messages from people who were at the rally, and of course we're going to be careful here, but there is concern among those who were there and those who were talking to those who were there about whether some people in the crowd might have been hit as well or affected in any way by the violence that has unfolded today in Butler, Pennsylvania. Former President Trump raising his fist in defiance. This is a moment for Trump supporters, as they talk to CBS News tonight, where they feel like he is determined to carry on in this race, but they're still just stunned and shocked. When a president or presidential figure is facing an assassination attempt, the nation is on.
Thanks for coming, folks. I've been thoroughly briefed by all the agencies in the federal government as to the situation, based on what we know now. I have tried to get a hold of Donald He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to them shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And so, and I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that people and we have more detail to come relative to other people maybe injured in the audience. I don't have all that detail. We'll make that available to you. I may be able to come back a little later tonight, but we'll put out a statement if I'm not able to if it's not convenient for you all. But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. Everybody must condemn it. Everybody. I'll keep you informed, and if I'm able to speak to Donald, I'll let you know that as well. So far, it appears he's doing well, number one. Number two, that they're thoroughly investigating what happened to anyone else in the audience. We have some reports, but not final reports. And every agency in the federal government, I'm going back to my phone to speak with the federal agencies that are being put together again to give me an updated briefing. Has anything happened? They learned any more in the last couple hours. So thank you very much, and I hope I get to speak to them tonight, and I'll get back to you if I do. Okay?
Mr. President, do you think this was an assassination attempt?
I don't know enough. I have an opinion, but I don't have any facts. So I want to make sure we have all the facts before I make any more comments. Thank you.
Are you worried, President?
And so that was Biden saying that, he was trying to get in touch with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump was with his doctors, and hopefully he gets in touch with him. And I'm pretty sure, this is a very unfortunate situation, but do y'all think that Trump want to get a phone call from Biden? Do y'all think that Trump thinks that this deliberately came from the Democrats? I'm pretty sure he's going to think that, even if he has proof that it didn't, because the gunman was shot and unalived immediately. And I'm pretty sure they're going to do well research on who he is, what's his background, and everything else. But this is going to be a way for the narrative to get pushed that, well, the Democrats already tried to put me in jail, indict me on charges, several cases, and all of a sudden now during his campaign run, he gets almost gets assassinated, which happens after the debate that everyone is saying that Biden lost, and that a lot of Democrats have came forward and said they wanted Biden to step down. Biden even did an interview with ABC World News where they were telling Biden, you haven't seen the polls, you haven't been looking at the numbers, you're behind. And was telling him that they wanted him to do a medical evaluation and reveal his results to the public. And Biden said he doesn't need it. He travels around with doctors every day. His doctor said that he's doing very well. It's just the night of the debate, he wasn't feeling well. He thought he had like COVID or a virus, but he just said it was just a bad night. So this also ties in my opinion, to the Fannie Willis stuff. The after the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump won't be facing any charges for the election case. So I don't know how it's going to go with the Stormy Daniels case and the judge making the decision on the sentence. Because if I'm not mistaken, I was told that that also can be put on hold, and this is why Donald Trump is still able to run. So he don't have to face that sentence until after he's out of the office if he becomes president. And then, of course, if he becomes president, he doesn't have to face some charges, the sentence at all. So I don't know how that goes, but a lot of people is going to try to say, oh, this attempt assassination also probably came from people being mad with the Supreme Court ruled on. Let me see. I want y'all to hear exactly what the Supreme Court ruled on. Okay, so this is a young lady who broke everything down so people can like really understand it. So I'm gonna turn it up so that y'all can hear it. Exactly what took place that day. Smart people are writing. Because I think people don't understand how serious the decision that was made at the Supreme Court. And let me say this: Trump, Biden, no president should not be liable to face charges if they get in office and think they can just unalive people or just do all these different things. And she's going to break it down of how, like, what it means for like bribery, if they accuse a president of bribery, of like the charges that Donald Trump was accused of. It's like a lower, it's things that's underneath those things that they call it where they can get away with these things. And I don't think that's good for no president, because then it does look like the 19th century and like it's not a president, it's like it's a king. So here we go. Some of y'all ain't gonna like what she got to say, but it is facts.
Hey guys. So we know that over the last, several days, there's been a lot of conversation about a certain old person, an old infirm person, who had a really bad debate last week. We've all had these conversations. Everybody's group chats are blowing up about it. All the op-ed pages, the New York Times is telling everybody what to do. All the op-ed, all the smart people are writing think pieces and such about what should be done next as far as the candidates are concerned on the ballot. Well, today the Supreme Court just made all of that completely irrelevant, because Leonard Leo's handpicked six, the Federalist Society six, the Leonard Leo six on the court, just declared. All right.
So if y'all don't know, the Leonard Leo six, that is the Supreme Court judges that made the decision about Trump doesn't have to face any charges.
That the president
So that's just
of the United States and a former president
understand
of the United States, that they are a king. Really bad debate last week. We've all had these conversations. Everybody's group chats are blowing up about it. All the op-ed pages, the New York Times is telling everybody what to do. All the op-ed, all the smart people are writing think pieces and such about what should be done next as far as the candidates are concerned on the ballot. Well, today the Supreme Court just made all of that completely irrelevant, because Leonard Leo's handpicked six, the Federalist Society six, the Leonard Leo six on the court, just declared days before this nation celebrates its independence, presumably from the British king, that the president of the United States and a former president of the United States, that they are a king. They have granted monarch-like powers to Donald Trump and declared him immune from prosecution for any acts that can be declared official acts. So any acts that he conducts as president and said that any acts he conducts as president, which may have resulted in crimes, must be presumed to be official acts if they are done through the purview of the presidency. And he is only not immune from strictly personal acts. What that means in regular people terms is that as long as Donald Trump used the apparatuses of the presidency, he can kind of do anything. So when he ordered his Justice Department, or tried to pressure his Justice Department and threatened to install different people in the Justice Department to come up with fake evidence of voter fraud so that he could declare the elections in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Arizona and Georgia to have been invalid, he can do that. And all the communications that he had with the Justice Department, even if they were criminal in nature, are immune from prosecution and cannot be used by prosecutors, by Jack Smith and others. He can do it because he used the official instruments of the presidency. When he tried to pressure Mike Pence, including using a violent insurrection to pressure him to accept fake electors instead of the real ones, the Biden ones, to accept the electors of himself and Donald Trump instead. As long as he used the official apparatuses of the presidency to do it, he can do it. Presumably, if he were to use SEAL Team 6 to try to assassinate one of his political opponents, so long as he did it through the auspices of the presidency, let's say use the NSA to say, let me investigate the Bidens as a national security threat. And then we need to go ahead and assassinate them when they take a foreign trip. We'll just go ahead and use drones to assassinate them, let's say in a foreign country. We'll use SEAL Team 6 to go in and get them like they got Bin Laden. As long as he do it through the official apparatuses of the presidency, he can do it. He can do anything.
Did y'all hear that? That if Trump becomes president, and if he wanted to, like, for instance, use the NSA to say he want to go investigate Biden's family because they like a security threat and assassinate them over at a foreign country or something, that he can do it long as he was under the acts of a president, right? But think about it. Biden is still in office. So people don't think that that doesn't go for Biden too. Biden's still in office. So the same thing that people saying that if Trump gets in office, if he wants to do this or do that, he can get away with it. Well, while Biden's in office, it's the same ruling. So if Biden wanted to assassinate one of his opponents and use the NSA and say they was a security threat, he can do it. So it's not just Trump. Long as he do it through the official of the presidency, they can do anything while they're president. And that's what they ruled on at the Supreme Court. And two members of the court, Clarence Thomas and I think Alita, who ruled on that case, John Roberts wrote the majority of the 3 liberal justices. So again, they want to say, oh, well, if Trump gets in office, he can do this, he can do that. But Biden's still in office. And any other president in the future, you think they're not taking notes?
Fake evidence of voter fraud so that he could declare the election, use SEAL Team 6 to go in and get them like they got Bin Laden. As long as he do it through the official apparatuses of the presidency, he can do it. He can do anything. When you're president, they let you do it. That's what they just ruled today, including 2 members of the court whose wives are insurrectionists. They did not recuse from that case. Clarence Thomas and Alito ruled in that case, in which John Roberts wrote the majority opinion. Let me read you what Sonia Sotomayor wrote for the 3 liberal justices, really the only justices that actually care about the Constitution. This is what she wrote in dissent. Never in the history of our republic has a president had reason to believe that he would be immune from criminal prosecution if he used the trappings of his office to violate the criminal law. Moving forward, however, all former presidents will be cloaked in such immunity. If the occupant of that office misuses official power for personal gain, the criminal law that the rest of us must abide will not provide a backstop, And then she added something that's never been included in a Supreme Court dissent that anyone can think of, even Plessy, none of them. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. This is DEFCON 1, friends. This lady has fear for our democracy because of the 6 other people on that court who care not about democracy, who have essentially said on the eve of the celebration of July 4th, Independence Day, that we do have a king, that our president is, in effect, a king, and that as long as they use the apparatuses of government, and this is on the heels of them saying that bribes are legal, because remember, what Donald Trump's argument was that the only thing you can do, the only recourse if a president commits a crime is that you have to impeach them and convict them, which has never happened in conviction. Do you know what you impeach people for? Treason and bribery and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Treason, which generally would mean trying to overthrow the government. They've taken that off the table. Bribery, well, they just previously took bribery off the table because they said as long as you pay the bribe after the acts are done by the public official, the elected official should not get paid in advance. They should just get paid after they do what you want. That's a gratuity, not a bribe. So they've taken bribery off the table. So who's going to check them, buddy? How are you going to impeach a president for treason and bribery when they just said treason is legal as long as you use the apparatuses of the presidency to commit said treason? And bribery is legal because all you have to do is call it a gratuity. And so they've taken off the table the only other thing that the Trump lawyer said you could do to a president if they commit crimes. So essentially, the presidency is now officially above the law. Well, who wouldn't want that job? Because you're a king on the eve of Independence Day. That's what they just did. This election is no longer about the old guy that's in the White House now. Like, all the op-ed pages and the New York Times can run around and opine about, what Joe Biden should do. And, y'all have fun with that. Enjoy yourselves, intellectual thought leaders. I no longer care. Doesn't matter to me anymore. It's above me now. It's above me now. There's a Waffle House next door. There's a Best Western next door as well. It's above me now. It's above Joe Biden now. Don't care about Joe Biden's age, infirmity, that he shuffle when he walk. I don't care. He could be seated for the rest of from now to election day and never get up off a chair. He could sit down. He could roll around in a wheelchair. He could be on a skateboard, seated. I don't care. Donald John Trump cannot be allowed back into the White House. Because if you combine that madman with this court, 2 of whose members are insurrectionists one of whom flew an upside down flag at his home and blamed it on his wife, who's also crazy. The other of whose wife literally was part of the insurrection. And they ruled in this. They put themselves in the Leonard Leo 6. They went ahead and ruled on this with no shame. You combine this court, 2 of whose members are going to immediately resign and put 30-year-olds in there, including probably the guy who wrote the opinion in the Beaters case, meaning that Beaters should be able to get machine guns, which, by the way, they have now arrogated to themselves the power to decide all federal rules. Everything, whether your plane that you fly in is safe, how much carbon can be in the atmosphere, how much filth can be in your water. They said agencies that have experts can't decide that. They will decide that. So they are kings, and Trump is king. You put him in the White House, combined with this court and a Republican House and Senate, we're done, y'all. All the rights that were won in the 20th century, the hard-earned rights of women, laborers, workers, the rights of children. Remember, child labor used to be legal. The rights of Black folks, forget that. The rights of non-white immigrants, forget that. All of the 20th century, they are trying to repeal the entire 20th century, and they're doing it fast. Between them and these crazy Republican governors, they are repealing the American century. the 20th century because they don't like it and they want back the 19th century. The century when super rich white men, unchecked and untaxed, amassed great wealth, passed it down with no taxation to their descendants and pretended that they had earned it on their own, that they were just masters of the universe. They want that era back. They think that the 20th century was an abomination and they are dismantling it. They're coming for every single one of our rights. They're not done. They're not done. If you love having your freedom, having the freedom for contraception, LGBTQ rights, that's going too. If you don't think they're coming for Obergefell, if you don't think they're coming for all these rights, then you are delusional. They're coming for all of it. They're dismantling the 20th century. They are repealing the 20th century. This ain't about Joe Biden anymore, y'all. It ain't about his policies. There are a lot of them I disagree with. There's a lot of them I disagree with deeply, deeply, morally. But it's not, it's above me now. It's above him now. You cannot allow Republicans to control the White House, the House, and the Senate, and the Supreme Court, and all of these states. You're now voting for your life. You must vote. Listen to
So, as y'all heard her, like I said, to me, this doesn't just fall on Donald Trump. This falls on any president. Biden, too. No president will have to face any criminal charges. So if Trump doesn't get in office, Biden can do everything she just said Trump can do and get away with it. And maybe this is why all them years that they claim Biden was doing this and doing that, maybe this is why he never faced criminal charges. And like I said, the judges who ruled against this on the Supreme Court, a lot of them were elected in when Trump was president. So now with Trump getting almost assassinated today, do y'all really think that this is going to make people not vote for Trump? Hey, Larry. So let's go back and review why Biden's team is saying they want him to step down. And do you think that this debate was terrible?
This 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks, and that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money. But now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing with the environment. He pulled out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing of all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything? We're not able to, the United States can't get its pollution under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
so every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I've been proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent, but the biggest thing will do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he, I believe, supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is, we're in a situation where we talk about education for black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants by another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He could look you in the face. About so many other things, too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden?
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession, and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put him there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border, that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We are the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody, number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up or go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history. One through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you, and they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that are very important. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he somehow helped the middle class. The middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are at the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border were, it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low, because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more being able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, because this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your 2nd term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the 2nd youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 50 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought off a lot of people. Well, the whole idea of computer chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call them, to build these chips. Those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us, all of our allies, and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, who he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace them.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay,
Let's not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to turn
Let's not act like children.
to a specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this with? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were president.
Trump, the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back.
Circle, available at Walmart and drink.
So as we move on, I just wanted to take y'all back to the debate, and then the Supreme Court making their decision leading up to now, Donald Trump was almost assassinated today. So again, this is not going to make people, oh, we're not voting for Trump. This is going to make people, more people, wanting to vote for him because now it's looking like he's a victim. So before I, because I don't want to miss this part, I wanted to talk about the Alex Baldwin case. Y'all know the actor. And how the judge dismissed the whole trial because of Brady evidence that the prosecutors held back. And also, she dismissed the case with prejudice, so they can never try him again. Remember in Rkelly's case, how they held back that the BOP officer and Tasha K leaked his personal information and was listening to his calls and his emails with his attorney and sharing them with a government witness, and how they held that back through his whole trial and waited 3 weeks before his verdict. Even his lawyer, Michael Leonard, said, oh, that's not true. They weren't listening in on the calls, because if that was true, it would be the quickest way to get a federal case thrown out and all the BOP officers would be arrested immediately. So what happened, Michael Leonard? Because it was true. And a lot of things that the judge denied the defense of showing in the trial to prove Robert's innocence, in my opinion, also affected the jury to turn another way. Because if they don't see something, if they're not presented with something, how can they know? Let's go here.
I have to go through every single element, and I have to make a very good record as to why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. So, in order to establish a Brady violation, the defendant must show that the prosecution suppressed evidence, the evidence was favorable to the accused, and the evidence was material to the defense. So let's go through the elements. Suppression of evidence. The definition of suppression of elements, this is Case versus Hatch, is while the first element requires proof that the prosecution suppressed or withheld the evidence in question, it does not require a finding of bad faith or any other culpable state of mind on the part of the prosecutor. This prong is satisfied. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office and the prosecution failed to disclose the supplemental report to defense and provide defense an opportunity to inspect the rounds collected into evidence that Mr. Teske gave. Is the evidence favorable to the accused? The second Brady element is whether the suppressed evidence was favorable to the accused, either as impeachment or exculpatory evidence. This prong is satisfied. The suppressed evidence is favorable to the accused. It is impeachment evidence, has even been offered in this trial as impeachment evidence, and is potentially exculpatory to the defense. Critically, the exculpatory value cannot be analyzed at such a late juncture because of the non-disclosure. Is the evidence material? While post-trial discovery of evidence under Brady requires a reasonable probability that the result of the proceeding would have been different, discovery of evidence during trial requires an evaluation of whether the late tender has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it impacts the fundamental fairness of the proceedings, and that is State versus Huerta Castro. This evidence is material. The late discovery of this evidence during trial has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it has impacted the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. The defense is not in a position to test the state's theory as to the source of the live rounds that killed Ms. Hutchins. I'm also going to take a look at Harper, State versus Harper. The assessment of sanctions depends upon the extent of the government's culpability, weighed against the amount of prejudice to the state, quoting Chenard. Let's go through culpability. Our case law generally provides that the refusal to comply with a district court's discovery order only rises to the level of exclusion or dismissal where the state's conduct is especially culpable, such as where evidence is unilaterally withheld by the state in bad faith, or all access to the evidence is precluded by state intransience. The state is highly culpable for its failure to provide this discovery to the defendant. The state unilaterally withheld a supplemental report. Santa Fe County Sheriff's Officer made the decision, and apparently also with the prosecutor, as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, that the evidence was of no evidentiary value and failed to connect the evidence to the instant case. The case agent, as well as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, Ms. Morrissey, was aware of the new evidence and yet did not make an effort to disclose it to defense. The state's willful withholding of this information was intentional and deliberate. If this conduct does not rise to the level of bad faith, it certainly comes so near to bad faith as to show signs of scorching. Prejudice. When discovery has been produced late, prejudice does not accrue unless the evidence is material and the disclosure is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. The court concludes that this conduct is highly prejudicial to the defendant. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and this disclosure during the course of trial is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. There is no way for the court to right this wrong. Lesser sanctions under Harper. Trial courts possess broad discretionary authority to decide what sanction to impose when a discovery order is violated. State versus Lemire. The sanction of dismissal is the only warranted remedy. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and a mistrial would not be based upon manifest necessity. Further, the sanction of dismissal is warranted in this case. The state has repeatedly made representations to defense and to the court that they were compliant with all their discovery obligations. Despite their repeated representations, they have continued to fail to disclose critical evidence to the defendant. Brady and Harper are satisfied. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted. Court also has power, inherent power. Per State versus Lemire, where discovery violations inject needless delay into the proceedings, courts may impose meaningful sanctions to effectuate their inherent power and promote efficient judicial administration. The state's discovery violation has injected a needless, incurable delay into the instant jury trial. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted. Now, with respect to the jury, I don't imagine you all want to return. You might have to go through every single element, and I have to make a very good record as to why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. So, in order to establish a Brady violation, the defendant must show that the prosecution suppressed evidence, the evidence was favorable to the accused, and the evidence was material to the defense. So let's go through the elements. Suppression of evidence. The definition of suppression of elements, this is Case versus Hatch, is while the first element requires proof that the prosecution suppressed or withheld the evidence in question, it does not require a finding of bad faith or any other culpable state of mind on the part of the prosecutor.
So they held back Brady evidence, and very important evidence, because the two individuals who got shot, one of the individuals, the female, was unalive, and one of the guys wound up living. But what they held back was that they didn't let the defense review the bullets that were supposed to be placed inside of that weapon that Alex Baldwin drew when he was on the scene during the movie. And that's why they claimed that somebody named, I think, Tenet or Tintry or something like that, dropped off live rounds at the scene of the movie. Why? I don't know. But basically, they switched the bullets that's supposed to shot her and the other guy. The ones that the prosecutors had didn't match the same ones that they claimed was put inside that gun that shot the two victims. They held this back. They also didn't let the defense, I believe, um go ahead and uh review how the other bullets what the other bullets looked like that were dropped off. So Alex Baldwin is a big celebrity just like R. Kelly and a lot of others. I never thought he was going to get a fair trial because of his celebrity status. Also, the prosecutor who did her opening statements for this case, she actually resigned as a prosecutor once she found out in court that the previous prosecutors on the case knew about this information and held it back from the defense. And she also stated that because the young lady was unalived in this situation and the information that she was given as a prosecutor, her job was to take this in front of a jury and see if they believe that this was a homicide and if Alex Baldwin was guilty. Um, but as her being a defense attorney and a federal and state prosecutor for decades, she said once she heard that the prosecutors held back that Brady information, she automatically told them, "Hey, we need to drop the charges from him." And she said that they literally was like going against her, like, "No, we're still gonna go on with the case," even though they knew that they held back Brady evidence, didn't tell her. But when she found out during lunchtime at the court on Friday, she automatically said, "Hey, let's drop the charges." They didn't want to do that. So the defense put in their motion. The defense provided the judge pictures of the actual bullets that they said was originally dropped off, that the prosecutors had that information. And now it's in the judge's hands, which she dismissed the case. But the prosecutor who did her opening statement, she went and did a interview with Law and Crime, which was good. I never heard a prosecutor talk like this before. I think a lot of people thought that like she was solely against Alex Baldwin because excuse me, because of her you know, prosecuting him. But she said she was just put on the case like not even long ago. And she had to hurry up and um uh get up to speed as fast as she could. And with the information that she had, she assumed that somebody was responsible for, I think her name is Hania or Hana or something like that, for her being unalive, which a lot of people saying it was an accident, but Alex was there to um, act on the scene, and he was given a weapon that he was using in the scene, and the weapon had live rounds in it. It was certain individuals who were supposed to check that before passing it to him, keep it in a secure place, make sure that it wasn't live rounds in it, making sure that nobody was supposed to, get hurt. So when he went to pull the trigger, he assumed there wasn't no live rounds in it. And unfortunately, 2 people got shot. So I'm gonna play this interview from the prosecutor who resigned right after the judge dismissed the charges.
The officers. I learned all of that yesterday when Mr. Spiro was crossing.
So, want to hear how crazy this got? One of the lead prosecutors, not the one who took the stand, Morrissey, one of the other, the one who gave the opening statement, quit today. Why? Guess what? This almost never happens. This prosecutor wants to be heard enough that she's coming on TV right after this happened. Erlinda Ocampo Johnson joins us now. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity.
Hi, Chris.
First, let me give you a chance to respond what was said about you. Another member of the team said you left the team because you didn't like that this Brady hearing was public.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I left because I learned about this evidence when the public learned about it yesterday, late afternoon. As I don't know if you're aware, I actually came on this case kind of late in the game. I came on the case towards the end of April, so I had to get up to speed. I was not involved in the Hannah Gutierrez case at all, and so I was not aware that this individual had taken this ammunition to the sheriff's department and provided it to the officers. I learned all of that yesterday when Mr. Spiro was cross-examining the crime scene technician. So I inquired some more. And this morning, when the motion hearing began, my position was during the lunch hour, before the lunch hour, during the lunch hour, we have an obligation as prosecutors. We have an obligation not only to the people, but to the defendant. And our obligation is to make sure that all the evidence is turned over. We don't get to decide what the defense is going to be. Our job is to ensure transparency and to ensure that the defendant has everything that the prosecution has gathered. What they do with it, that's up to them. Go ahead.
Two things. One, the better minds that I bring on the show, because what do I know, were very impressed by your opening. They felt that you had good command and that you made a very strong case. Did you believe that Alec Baldwin should be found guilty?
I did. I believed the evidence that we had. I had no idea that there was this other evidence that had not been turned over. That there were some actions that were done during the filming, and there was some recklessness. I did based on the evidence that was available. But my job is not to get a conviction. It's to put the evidence before a jury. That's how I saw my job, is to put all this evidence before the. Introducing Norton Genie, the AI-powered scam detector that makes it so.
To the judge.
Is because of all the work that he's done.
Individuals come behind them.
You know, the one thing about celebrities, Kinsey, and I'm sure you noticed this too, working with.
And a lot of people were saying because Alex Baldwin case was thrown out that this might help Young Thug, because Still has put in a lot of motions that um Prosecutor Love and Hilton had held back information, waited to the last minute to say this person testifying, oh, we bringing this in, we doing that. And you're not supposed to do that. All of that stuff is supposed to be in before the trial starts. So to see that Judge Glanville was consistently letting the prosecutors email the defense that morning, the night before, oh, hey, we're introducing this, hey, we're bringing this in. That's not how that go. So a lot of these cases we see that prosecutors would do different things and the judge will automatically rule with the prosecutor. And then I want y'all to hear
That are clapping. So this
what the defense said.
and corporal the movie set of Rust, of course, going to grant this motion to dismiss, which a lot of people are like, wow, that is just going to be such a huge victory, of course, for defense. Well, let's go through culpability.
And just to see that all the prosecutors wasn't even on the same
Sheriff's office and the prosecution,
like how y'all not on the same
but because
time.
the
Why is
prosecution,
one
the state,
saying
the
something
investigators violated the Constitution.
Now, how many prosecutors violate defendants' rights?
Ms. Popple on how she retrieved
But
those.
because this was on TV, because this was displayed to the public, you can't get away with all of that stuff. Like in Rkelly case, because it was federal, you can't display the trial to the public. See, that's how the feds get away with a lot, because the public can't see those trials step by step unless you get the transcripts, which a lot of that stuff can be redacted. Look how Judge Glanville in the YSL case had a whole ex parte meeting with a witness that already said from day one he was going to plead the fifth, and they basically coerced him to say, oh, if you don't testify, we're going to leave you in jail until every defendant is tried. And that could be years. That's coercion. And if they never found out about the ex parte meeting, they wasn't going to tell that. But because the public has every eye on this trial, they can't get away with nothing.
Ms. Popple on how she retrieved those. Call is Mr. Kenny. How do you want to call is
Generated, according to you, at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial?
I just want to sort of point.
Oh, hey, with Zine, you can stream free local TV from all over the country. Zine speaks for itself. It really doesn't need a.
We're back on the record. Well, okay, so just. You swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Have a seat.
Collective bargaining agreements for his national labor union, and he wasn't going to be able to have enough time.
And they also made the other prosecutor take the stand. So it was like after her testimony, the defense came
That never
forward.
got turned over to the defense. You understand that that's Brady evidence?
I did, yes.
Okay. And you also failed to turn that over in this case as well, correct?
See, and this is how it started.
And I had no idea that it wasn't going to have the same case number. I want to show the court, though, when Mr. Teskey showed up to testify with the ammunition that Mr. Bowles told him to bring to the state of New Mexico, he was not called as a witness, and Mr. Bowles said, "I'm not taking that ammunition from you." That's why. Because these are photographs from Hannah Gutierrez's cell phone extraction, and they show spot-on match for the live rounds found on the set of Rust. This is clearly the reason that Mr. Bowles said, "You and your ammunition better get out of here," because it would not have hurt the case, the state's case against Hannah Gutierrez. It would have been the best evidence I could have hoped for. These look exactly like the ammunition, the actual ammunition that we have in evidence, and they do look like the 3 rounds that are in that envelope. So when Mr. Teskey couldn't get Mr. Bowles to take them because they were the best evidence against his client, he took them over to the sheriff's department. And when he dropped them at the sheriff's department, I was told that there was going to be a report. There was a report. I assumed they look like these. And Detective Hancock indicated to me that because he dropped them off and he didn't wait for her, she was then going to try to follow up with him, take a statement from him, so that we could get some idea where they came from, what the relevance was, if there was any relevance at all. And he never returned her phone calls. And that's all of the information that I can give the court, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
May I ask a few questions, Ernest? When you took over this case, the investigator handling the case, Mr. Schilling, left the case, correct?
At my request, yes.
The paralegal that was handling this case with you left the case, Mr. Tatt.
At my request, yes.
Well, the first prosecutor that was working with you on this case, you selected, correct?
I did.
And he resigned too?
I wouldn't say that he resigned, no.
Okay. He didn't stay on the case for the Alec Baldwin trial, correct?
No, and he indicated that that was because he represented a labor union that's a national labor union, and he was not expecting the trial to be set so quickly. He wasn't expecting it to be set in July. So when he realized that the trial was going to be set in July, he was going to be in collective bargaining agreements for his national labor union, and he wasn't going to be able to have enough time.
Erlinda Johnson, the next prosecutor selected, resigned from the case today.
She did.
Based in part on the conduct we're here discussing, correct?
I believe that Ms. Johnson Ms. Johnson didn't want my understanding is that she didn't agree with the decision to have a public hearing.
On July 1st in this matter, you served a certificate of compliance with 5501, correct?
I did.
And you've never turned over the report or any of the evidence that we're talking about here at this hearing, correct?
Let's take it one at a time. I did not turn over the report. I didn't have a copy of the report. The rounds that were left at the Sheriff's Department by Troy Teskey, I have absolutely no reason to believe that they are relevant to the incident that took place on the set of Rust. These are rounds that were in the possession of Bell Reed and never left the state of Arizona.
You also did not allow the defense to view that evidence at any point during our request to review evidence in this case.
I had never seen it, and I didn't realize that it wasn't under the same case number because I'm not a law enforcement officer and I don't work at the Sheriff's Department. But you are right.
And you can see that they are Starline brass silver 45, right?
I can. And this is the best evidence against Hannah Gutierrez.
Yeah, you said that a couple of times. Any favorable evidence you understand as a prosecutor has to be turned over to the defense, correct?
I do.
Any evidence that could be used as a defense to potentially be favorable has to be turned over to the defense.
Absolutely.
So the third Hague report that never got turned over to the defense, you understand that that's Brady evidence?
I did, yes.
Okay. And you also failed to turn that over in this case as well, correct?
And let me give you a full answer to your question. When the second Hague report came in, and I provided all of this to the defense, I sent it to the person who is managing the discovery server and asked them to upload it. It wasn't until I realized during pretrial interviews that it wasn't there that there was a problem with it. So I then attempted to figure out what the problem was, and it was indicated to me that it appeared that the former paralegal who was working for the special prosecutor had removed it. So we then immediately provided it. Then during the pretrial interview of Mr. Hague, it was brought to my attention that the defense did not have the August 31st report that indicated that the gun functioned fine, perfectly fine. And that was provided immediately. I went back, I checked my email, I could see that I received it from Mr. Hague and failed to forward it on to be uploaded. And I provided it as soon as I was aware that you did not have it.
The fact that nobody at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial cross-examined Mr. Hague about the report didn't clue you into the fact that nobody had the report?
Actually, it didn't, and I'd like to address that. The reason that it didn't clue me in is because Hannah Gutierrez's defense was that the gun worked perfectly. The defense in Hannah Gutierrez was never interested in any evidence that there was an issue with the gun, because if there was an issue with the gun, it damaged her case. So what you could see, if you watched the trial or saw any of the transcript, the defense actually brought in their own expert to say that the gun worked perfectly. So they had no interest in that information.
And actually, you elicited testimony from Mr. Hague at that trial that was inconsistent, at least partially inconsistent, as the court's aware, with his third report, correct?
Tell me what you're referring to, and I'll answer your question.
Well, there was a whole hearing about this where you saw this, and you saw me go back and forth with Mr. Hague for 25 minutes. So
I agree, but I need to know what you're talking about for me to answer your question.
Okay, if you can't answer the question, you can't answer the question. I'll move on.
I'm happy to, but
you say that the extent of the communications you have about the doc report, as you relay it to the court, is that all you said in response was, "Great, do that." That's your testimony?
Yeah, I assumed that it was going to be tied to the same case number. So I said, great, do it, file a report.
No follow-up questions?
No, because I had a picture of the ammunition that didn't match the ammunition from the set of Rust.
No concerns in your mind when you got the case file and you turned it over to us and it wasn't included?
Absolutely not. There's a terabyte of discovery. I didn't know whether this 2-page police report had been provided. And in addition to that, I had no reason to believe, and still have no reason to believe, that those rounds have anything to do with these cases.
As I asked you about Mr. Hague yesterday when Ms. Popple testified, you would agree with me that her testimony under oath was false?
What part of her testimony was false? And I'll answer.
That she said that these rounds don't look anything like the rounds on the set when you elicited that testimony.
I agree with you, and I didn't realize that there were rounds that looked like that.
It's okay. In any event, when the court, and you never tested those rounds either, correct?
Any of the rounds that came from Mr. Teskey? No, because they came in just a few months ago.
And the court asked you actually one question that I want to address, which is the court said to you, well, what's interesting to me, to be quite honest, is that yesterday you didn't even want to do a written reply. You wanted to just give an oral response. And what you said to the court was, I never saw these, I've never seen these, and I never saw the report. I have absolutely never seen these until this morning. Do you remember saying that to the court?
With regard to the 3 Starline brass, with regard to the 3 cartridges that appear to be similar to Rust, yes.
Well,
I never saw them until today.
Well, but you said also, I never saw the report, right?
I never did.
Right, but don't you think, given your duty of candor to this court, that that's awfully misleading to not tell the court at that point that you knew about this when it occurred long ago?
That I knew about what?
You knew that Mr. Teskey had turned in this evidence, that you knew that the report would have existed because you just told this court that the doc report was okayed by you.
Sure.
Don't you think it was misleading to this court to not just say at that point, you know, just so you know, I know about this. I knew about this then. I was involved.
I did not intend to mislead the court. My understanding of what was dropped off at the sheriff's department is on this computer screen, and it looks absolutely nothing like the live rounds from the set of Rust.
The truth of this matter is, you don't like Mr. Baldwin very much, do you?
You know, that is absolutely untrue. I actually really appreciate Mr. Baldwin's movies. I really appreciated the acting that he did on Saturday Night Live, and I really appreciate his politics.
You told one of the witnesses who disagreed with you during an interview that you thought Mr. Baldwin was a cocksucker.
I do not recall saying that. I know that that was something that Mr. Baldwin would say on the set of Rust. I don't recall saying that.
Do you deny that under oath?
Without having more information, I can tell you that I do not recall ever saying that. And if I did say it, I invite you to point it out to me.
You called him an arrogant prick to another witness.
To who? To what witness?
I'm asking you, did you call him an arrogant prick during the witness interview?
I don't believe I did. I don't recall.
Do you deny that?
Without knowing what you're talking about, all I can tell you is that I can't respond if I don't know what you're talking about.
And you said also to witnesses that you would teach him a lesson.
I never said to witnesses that I would teach him a lesson. Absolutely not. In fact, Mr. Spiro, I want to give a full response to your question. I made every effort in this case to resolve this case with your client in a very favorable way for him.
All right, I'm going to move to strike this. It's not responsive.
It is
Well,
responsive.
I don't want to talk about plea negotiations.
Yeah, and it's not responsive. So I have no further questions.
Do you have any follow-up testimony?
I want to say I have no recollection of calling him any of those names. I have invited the defendant to tell me what he's talking about, and he has declined. I want the court to take notice of that.
Thank you. You may step down. All right, any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right, argument, let's not, 15 minutes aside sufficient?
I don't even think that it's necessary, frankly.
Do you want to make argument?
Further argument.
All right.
I don't think you decide any further argument.
All right. So dismissal with prejudice is a very extreme sanction. And case law is very clear that because it's very extreme, I have to go through every single element, and I have to make a very good record as to why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. So in order to establish a Brady violation, the defendant must show that the prosecution suppressed evidence, the evidence was favorable to the accused, and the evidence was material to the defense. So let's go through the elements. Suppression of evidence. The definition of suppression of elements, this is Case versus Hatch, is while the first element requires proof that the prosecution suppressed or withheld the evidence in question, it does not require a finding of bad faith or any other culpable state of mind on the part of the prosecutor. This prong is satisfied. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office and the prosecution failed to disclose the supplemental report to defense and provide defense an opportunity to inspect the rounds collected into evidence that Mr. Teske gave. Is the evidence favorable to the accused? The second Brady element is whether the suppressed evidence was favorable to the accused, either as impeachment or exculpatory evidence. This prong is satisfied. The suppressed evidence is favorable to the accused. It is impeachment evidence, has even been offered in this trial as impeachment evidence, and is potentially exculpatory to the defense. Critically, the exculpatory value cannot be analyzed at such a late juncture because of the non-disclosure. Is the evidence material? While post-trial discovery of evidence under Brady requires a reasonable probability that the result of the proceeding would have been different, discovery of evidence during trial requires an evaluation of whether the late tender has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it impacts the fundamental fairness of the proceedings, and that is State versus Huerta Castro. This evidence is material. The late discovery of this evidence during trial has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it has impacted the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. The defense is not in a position to test the state's theory as to the source of the live rounds that killed Ms. Hutchins. I'm also going to take a look at Harper, State versus Harper. The assessment of sanctions depends upon the extent of the government's culpability, weighed against the amount of prejudice to the state, quoting Chenard. Let's go through culpability. Our case law generally provides that the refusal to comply with a district court's discovery order only rises to the level of exclusion or dismissal where the state's conduct is especially culpable, such as where evidence is unilaterally withheld by the state in bad faith, or all access to the evidence is precluded by state intransience. The state is highly culpable for its failure to provide this discovery to the defendant. The state unilaterally withheld the supplemental report. Santa Fe County Sheriff's Officer made the decision, and apparently also with the prosecutor, pursuant to Hancock's testimony, that the evidence was of no evidentiary value and failed to connect the evidence to the instant case. The case agent, as well as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, Ms. Morrissey, was aware of the new evidence and yet did not make an effort to disclose it to defense. The state's willful withholding of this information was intentional and deliberate. If this conduct does not rise to the level of bad faith, it certainly comes so near to bad faith as to show signs of scorching. Prejudice. When discovery has been produced late, prejudice does not accrue unless the evidence is material and the disclosure is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. The court concludes that this conduct is highly prejudicial to the defendant. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and this disclosure during the course of trial is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. There is no way for the court to right this wrong. Lesser sanctions. Under Harper, trial courts possess broad discretionary authority to decide what sanction to impose when a discovery order is violated, State versus Lemire. The sanction of dismissal is the only warranted remedy. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and a mistrial would not be based upon manifest necessity. Further, the sanction of dismissal is warranted in this case. The state has repeatedly made representations to defense and to the court that they were compliant with all their discovery obligations. Despite their repeated representations, they have continued to fail to disclose critical evidence to the defendant. Brady and Harper are satisfied. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted. Court also has power, inherent power. Per State versus Lemire, where discovery violations inject needless delay into the proceedings, courts may impose meaningful sanctions to effectuate their inherent power and promote efficient judicial administration. The state's discovery violation has injected a needless, incurable delay
into the instant jury trial. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted. Now, with respect to the jury, I don't imagine you all want to return on Monday. I will take care of the jury.
Thank you.
We are in recess. I'm gonna think.
Thank you all for your help. Okay. Get on the party.
Yeah.
Thank you.